welcome you to Michigan International Speedway in the Irish Hills of southern Michigan near Jackson for the Detroit News Grand Prix for ASA stock cars. The temperature here this afternoon, 80 degrees. Sunshine earlier today. However, in the last couple of hours, the clouds have moved in. We hope no rain this afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bob Jenkins along with Larry Nuber. ASA on the high banks of Michigan International Speedway. The pole sitter for this race, Dick Trickle, qualified at better than 169 miles an hour, and that's faster than the Grand National cars go here, Larry.
It sure is, Bob, and the primary reason is weight. These cars are about 900 pounds lighter than Grand National race cars. We are on Grand National tires, by the way, but you know, when you think of ASA cars, they're really almost more akin to open-wheel race cars. They have coilover shocks and a lot of other characteristics that you normally see on open-wheel racers.
At least one ASA regular will not be competing here today. Bob Sineker had a bad crash yesterday. And we thought that Jim Sauter would not be competing in this race, but he will after all.
Well, he has somewhat of a surprise this morning, and Jack will be getting to that in just a second. But this racetrack has proven to be very tricky for the ASA competitors, particularly the veterans. They say you just can't tell when the car is getting ready to get away from you.
Well, let's get more on this situation by going to the pit area and Jack Arute.
Bob, former ASA champion Jim Sauter attempted qualifications and crashed hard in turns 1 and 2 just yesterday. But he's going to be driving in a car number 24 and starting in the back of the pack. You've taken over this ride, and Jim, we understand you have got no time behind the wheel of this machine.
Well, that's right. Of course, there's no practice today, this morning or anything, because it's race day, and that's one of our rules. And so Dave Jensen is kind of the rent-a-racer man of ASA, and he's been good enough to let us run his car, and he's got good equipment here. And of course, the setups in my field versus his and all the rest of the stuff is still going to be a big surprise, but I think we'll do well in the car, and it's prototype engines, and it's a good Howe chassis. It's stuff that I'm used to and been running all season, and so I think we're going to have a pretty good day. It's going to be a long road to the front, but if everything goes the way I think it will, I think we'll be running in contention.
What about yesterday, though, in the crash? What actually happened, Jim? We're taking a look at it right now.
Well, as I went down into turn 1 and between 2, the car started to get a little loose. We have run flat foot here in practice this afternoon, and the car felt real good. In fact, it felt tight, so we taped the nose up, which we usually do to qualify, and I knew it was going to loosen the car up some, but it did get away on me, and as simple as that. We went to correct a little bit, and I'm quite frankly, you can't be correcting too much with these short wheelbase cars and the hard tires that we have to run and so on down the line, you know, so you got to be careful. Anyway, we lost the car and did a lot of damage to it, and that's the way it works.
Well, that's the way it works, but one good thing, Jim Sauter's got plenty of laps here because he's run Grand Nationals at Michigan International Speedway before. Good luck, Jim. Back up to the tower.
All right, Jack, and we'll look forward to your reports from the pit area. 100 laps of flat-out stock car racing coming up on ESPN, and we'll be right back with the action.
The Budweiser Clydesdales, proud symbols of quality and tradition. For centuries, Clydesdales have been known for their power, grace, and beauty. They are truly a special breed. Budweiser, brewed with that great Beechwood aged taste. For everyone who cares about quality and tradition, this Bud's for you.
From the Chapman Academy in Columbia, Missouri, TSN presents the 7th Annual Bianchi Invitational Pistol Tournament. Competitors are judged on quickness and accuracy from standing, lying, and obstructed positions. The 7th Annual Bianchi Invitational Pistol Tournament, Sunday, November 10th at 9:30 p.m. Eastern on the Sports Network.
The 32 starters in today's Detroit News Grand Prix on the backstretch now in one of 2 parade laps. Prior to the start of this event, now Michigan International Speedway is a 2-mile high-bank tri-oval. The backstretch is 2,242 feet in length. The turns, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, are banked at 18 degrees. The front stretch is banked at 12 degrees and the backstretch at 5 degrees. Now we'll take a look at the starting lineup for today's race. In row number 1 on the pole, Dick Trickle, car number 98. He's from Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin. Outside of row number 1, car 2, Mark Martin from Batesville, Arkansas. In the second row, car number 78, Ed Cooper, and number 88, Mike Eddy. In the third row, Butch Miller in car number 52 and Alan Kulwicki in 28. The fourth row, Dennis Vogel, car number 51, and Harold Fair in 81. In the fifth row will be Bob Strait in car number 80 and John Ziegler in number 98. Then in the sixth row, Dave Simcoe and Jack Gritter. In the seventh row, Terry Seneker and Bobby Dotter. In row number 8, Ken Stauffer and Gene Harsh. In the ninth row, Bill Stevenson and Dave Jackson. Row 10, Larry Conroy and Ed Evans. In the 11th row, Kurt Cheshire and Tom Jones. In the 12th row, Jerry Churchill and Gary Ballou. The 13th row, Wally Lambert and Donnie Gregory. The 14th row, Peter Gibbons and Jim Stodder. In the 15th row, Russ Erlin and Ken Lund. And in the 16th row will be Tom Harrington and number 4, Ken Harrison. Those are your starters for today's Detroit News Grand Prix. We have radio contact with Mark Martin outside row 1.
Certainly nobody represents ASA more than the name Mark Martin. Mark, this is Larry Nuber up on ESPN. The cars here at Michigan International, despite all the laps that you put in an ASA car, they respond differently here, don't they?
Yes, this is a little bit different for us here on the the ASA circuit, because we're not really used to racing on the 2-mile speedways. But, all the drivers really adjust to the cars real well and get their cars going good. I think you're getting ready to see one of the best races you've ever seen at Michigan International right now.
Mark, best of luck to you, and good luck starting from the outside of the very front row. Good luck, Mark.
Thank you. We hope we can put this Miller American Ford up front.
An excellent field of race cars and drivers gathered here for this race today, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens when the green flag drops. Dick Trickle and Mark Martin starting side by side in row number 1. Ed Cooper, who is a NASCAR driver, in row number 2, along with Mike Eddy. And then from the rear of the field, we've got to be keeping our eye on Gary Ballou in car 112.
We have seen Ballou start in a position like this at Michigan International in an ASA car before and pass about 15 of them going into the first turn. So Gary Ballou could be worth a few fireworks before the day is over.
The pace car is off of the racetrack. The field is moving through turn number 4 now and anticipating a green flag this time around, and we'll get this 100-lap event underway. Here comes the field beginning to accelerate as they head for the tri-oval. Trickle on the pole is pulling out ahead of Mark Martin, and the green flag is out. We are racing at Michigan. Dick Trickle let him down to get the green flag and pulled about a car length ahead of Mark Martin, and now begins to pull a little bit further ahead in turn number 2 as they hit the backstretch for the first time. They come off of 18-degree banking onto 5-degree banking as they go down the backstretch. That's Mike Eddy, who has moved now into second position, bringing Alan Kulwicki with him. They put Mark Martin back to 4th already.
Now let me stress, this is a big racetrack. It's wide. There's a lot of room to maneuver. It may not look like they're going fast, but they are going faster than the Grand National car.
And we have a spin in turn number 4. A car spinning and looping, sliding into pit lane. That is the number 55 of Bill Stevenson from Richmond Hill, Ontario. And the car is
Kurt Cheshire.
Whoops.
Kurt Cheshire in car number 56.
That's right.
There, yeah. Kurt is a younger fella who shows a great deal of promise, as a matter of fact, in this type of racing. And he came into this weekend with a great deal of optimism. He was looking forward to having the chance to run at MIS.
Well, the yellow does not come out because he slid into the pit lane well off of the racetrack, and so we are still racing. Dick Trickle drops off the pace considerably now, falling back to 3rd, now being passed for 3rd by Mark Martin. Mike Eddy in car number 88 is the leader. Alan Kulwicki is running in 2nd position, and Trickle and Mark Martin battle for 3rd.
Okay, question, draft? Yeah, not quite as much as the big 3,700-pound Grand National cars, but what happens in these cars, these Camaros and Firebirds and the Ford Thunderbirds that run, and of course that is a Ford product following a General Motor product right now, is you have to get a little closer under normal circumstances to draft in these cars than you do Grand National cars. There goes Kulwicki to the inside of Mike Eddy, using what draft there is. It's not quite as abrupt as it is also in the bigger race cars. You kind of ooze in behind the guy right in front of you. And that time, Alan Kulwicki used the ooze just right.
Alan Kulwicki and the Hardee's Ford with the lead at this moment. However, Mike Eddy pulls alongside to the inside of the racetrack. They come down to complete lap number 3, and they're almost side by side. Eddy with perhaps just a slight advantage, but crossing the line right beside of Alan Kulwicki. A tremendous performance in the first 3 laps by Gary Ballou, who started 24th and has already moved to 8th spot.
Mike Eddy down on the bottom of the racetrack. That's the Ed Howe car. Of course, that is a legendary name in late model stock car racing in the Midwest, the upper Midwest. Alan Kulwicki holding on, and Mike Eddy and Kulwicki go side by side like they are pasted together going into 3. Eddy, a little bit of an advantage down there in the bottom of the racetrack, but the groove on the high side should help propel Alan around as they come out of the corner, but both cars getting a perfect bite all the way around corners 3 and 4. Just perfect, Carmen.
Let's see how they cross the line this time. They were side by side last time, and even closer this time. It's virtually a dead heat as they cross the line, completing lap number 4. Mike Eddy in the green car to the inside of the racetrack, and Alan Kulwicki in the Hardee's 4 to the outside. Right behind this group is Mark Martin in car number 2. Then comes Dick Trickle, and following that would be the number 112 of Gary Ballou, who has already moved up to 5th position.
You can see the draft taking effect. Eddy and Kulwicki just powered by Mark Martin and Dick Trickle. They looked like they were going to run away with this thing, but once they got side by side, that allowed Martin to catch up. There you see him going around Eddy, and Dick Trickle is also not far behind.
Well, on the very first lap, as the cars came through corner number 4 into the tri-oval, Kurt Cheshire looping it to the bottom of the racetrack and sliding into the pit lane.
Doing a couple of perfect 360s. He went around one more time. Here you see him executing the second spin. The car ends up going in the correct direction. He makes a quick stop in the pits, and he's back out under racing green flag conditions, but well behind the field, of course.
Well, there are the top 5 as they go down the backstretch. Here's a race involving the number 12 car of Jack Ritter from Grand Rapids, Michigan. And moving alongside as they go down the backstretch is Terry Seneker.
Yeah, Seneker is a guy who has won an ASA race in his career. He's spent so much of his career in the shadows of his older brother Bob because he's the all-time feature winner in ASA racing. But Terry Seneker has the ability, and he really smoking those tires. I think maybe that's more than tires. No, it's hard to say. I would guess it's tire smoke, but he has the ability to do well in an ASA race. He certainly has the ability to win on a fast track. It seems to be the kind of racetrack that he prefers.
This is the battle for 11th position now as they go into corner number 2 and down the backstretch now into corner number...
Is that Ballou already up in that? I believe it is. Can you imagine that? Gary Ballou, who started probably 3 or 4 seconds behind the leaders because he was at the back of the pack. He's up to 5th already, and I don't think he's done climbing yet. Goes Kulwicki to the high side of Mike Eddy.
Battle for the lead once again. Alan Kulwicki high side, Mike Eddy low side off of turn 4 into the tri-oval. Here they come once again, and side-by-side racing as they cross the stripe to complete lap 7. Eddy and Kulwicki, and look at Gary Ballou in that red car, number 112, moving into 3rd spot. Can he move into 2nd here? He's alongside Mark Martin. Let's go down to the pit area quickly and check Arute.
You know the problems that Gary Ballou had all weekend here in attempting qualifications. He started far in the back of the pack because his motor kept missing. Last night they took the car back to a nearby garage, took it all apart, went through the engine. You know what they discovered? A 39-cent ignition switch had gone bad. They replaced that. They started the car today, and it's running like a dream.
It sure is. He is now in 3rd spot. He moved into 3rd, going to the inside of Mark Martin in turn number 3. There is Gary Ballou from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, now 3rd, behind Alan Kulwicki and Mike Eddy. Eddy leads this lap. That's lap number 8. But Ballou now moves to the inside of Kulwicki, looking for 2nd spot, and he's got it. Ballou has moved from 25th to 2nd in just 8 laps.
Gary Ballou is driving the only carbon fiber Kevlar tub in the field. You look inside this car, it's like looking inside of an Indianapolis car because there's a complete fiberglass or fiberglass appearance. It's actually carbon fiber and Kevlar tub, and it's stronger than most of the cars running, and Gary says he feels very comfortable in it. Could be a big factor in a track like this.
Now he puts some heat on Mike Eddy for the lead. Let's see how things stack up out of corner number 4. Ballou will move to the inside of the leader, Mike Eddy, but he leaves about a car length between himself and Eddy as they cross the stripe for lap number 9. And now Alan Kulwicki, there in 3rd position, moves inside of Gary Ballou and tries to take the position back again. He does by about a half a car length, but now Ballou with the advantage off of corner number 2.
The cars are not hooking up. Nobody is. Everybody's running side by side. It allows no one to get away and run and hide.
Can Gary Ballou move into the lead a 25th place start. Well, let's see. He moves to the inside, and yes, he does. He slips by Mike Eddy for the lead. Gary Ballou will complete lap number 10 when he crosses the stripe this time, and he'll be the leader. An unbelievable performance by this Fort Lauderdale, Florida driver.
What a climb by Gary Ballou. Again, we have seen him do this time after time. The few appearances that ASA has made here at the Michigan International Speedway. Ballou, of course, the former Grand National driver. He has the ability to run competitively on dirt. We've seen him run open wheel cars in ESPN, and certainly he does well on these high bank paved ovals also.
So the story in the early going of this 100-lapper here at Michigan International Speedway, Gary Ballou, who is in the lead with Mike Eddy running second. Back with more of the Detroit News Grand Prix after this.
Can't beat our family sedans, and nothing proves that better than their family sedans. Compare Plymouth Caravelle and Dodge 600 against Chev Celebrity and Pontiac 6000. Compare for 5-year, 80,000-kilometer protection, for luxury and comfort for 6, and for the option of turbo power. Compare Dodge 600 and Plymouth Caravelle against the competition. Then make our family sedan your family sedan. At Chrysler, we just want to be the best.
Exercise and fun along with helpful tips is what Bodies in Motion is all about. Weekdays at 12 noon Eastern. Now's the time to get yourself fit with this great half hour. Bodies in Motion, weekdays at 12 noon Eastern, right here on the Sports Network.
Back at Michigan International Speedway, Bob Jenkins, Larry Nuber, and Jack Arute on hand for this race involving the American Speed Association ASA cars. And what a race it's been in the first 11 laps. Gary Ballou, the leader, as one of the cars, Ed Cooper, moves into the pit area, and Ed was running up in the top 6.
Well, Ed is from nearby Clarks Lake, Michigan. I mean, it's just down the road. When I say nearby, I mean, that's an understatement. Ed, of course, has run late models in this area. There goes Eddie down to the inside of Ballou one more time. Cooper qualified very well here today, particularly because he's just a local.
He started the race in 3rd spot, but has come in for an early pit stop. Ed Cooper has driven NASCAR Grand National cars on this track in the past. Mike Eddy has taken over the lead from Gary Ballou. Now Ballou and Kulwicki run side by side, crossing the line once again. Eddy in that green number 88, the leader.
Gotta say, I'm a little surprised. Ballou is way down on the bottom of the racetrack. I think he is slowing down, Bob. The way Gary came up through the field, I figured that as soon as he would get the lead, he would be able to hold it. Now, another thing that might be going on, Gary may be in control of what's going on here. He may say, hey, I just discovered I am faster than anybody in the field. This race is not going to be won, as we see Kulwicki leapfrogging back to the lead. This race is not going to be won in the next 20 laps. I think I'll follow a while, save this car a little bit, then maybe I'll have enough left at the end to drive for the win.
Alan Kulwicki's Ford on the high side of the racetrack, battling with Mike Eddy. Here they come once again, and again they are side by side as they complete lap number 13. They're averaging 160.35 miles an hour out there after a qualifying run of 169 by Dick Trickle, who, by the way, has fallen back to 5th spot.
These cars are powered by 355 cubic inch engines. They run 9-to-1 compression ratios, by the way. They were the first major division to really make the commitment to go to that. The drivers say and the crews say it's much better on the engines. They get longer lives out of these engines than the vast majority of professional racing organizations. By the way, they use 390 CFM carburetors, making it similar to Grand National situation.
Through the tri-oval, and Kulwicki now in the lead by about a car length and a half over Gary Ballou. That's Mike Eddy running in 3rd. Dick Trickle is 4th, and Mark Martin is the 5th car in the choo-choo train as they go into turn number 1.
The Fords have made a big splash in this type of racing also this year. It's not like in Grand National where there has been one Ford that won half the races. Bill Elliott, of course, but Alan Kulwicki has won. Bob Seneca has won in the Ford. Mark Martin has won in the Ford. The victories have been spread around, but the Fords have definitely been the dominant setup for most of the year in this type of racing.
Now Gary Ballou once again moving inside of Alan Kulwicki. They're in turn number 4. There goes Gary Ballou back into the lead. And Ballou does indeed have a great setup. This car is working well here. And it's quite obvious that his is the fastest car on the racetrack at this point. The question is, when he drops back, is he doing so because the car isn't performing well, or is he dropping back because he knows what the car can do and he's just simply taking it a little bit easy? There is Jim Sauter in car number 24, who is moving up quickly.
Yes, Sauter's running in 8th position. He's running on the racetrack near Kent Stauffer, who qualified well. He qualified up in the top 10. Stauffer's been running consistently, runs in 7th. Right now, Sauter has gotten away from the rest of the pack. You can see the first 7 or 8 cars now are ahead of everybody else, and Sauter's got to get up there all by himself. He has nobody to draft with. But again, the draft is a factor in this type of racing, but not as big a factor as it is in Grand National and the same racetrack.
Ballou and Kulwicki battling for the lead once again. In the first turn, looks like Gary's car may have bottomed out there as he went low to the racetrack in turn number 1, but it worked. He's in the lead once again. Now here comes Mike Eddy in number 88, also passing Kulwicki, and again the change of position. Down the backstretch, Kulwicki and Eddy run side by side in a crash. We have cars crashing over in turn number 2.
Dennis Vogel in car number 51, one of our top 10 qualifiers, a guy who surprised a lot of people by qualifying up that far for the race today, is involved. He is an ASA regular. I saw an orange car. Kurt Cheshire was running on the track back in that area, but Dave Jackson was also no confirmation yet as to the other car involved. But obviously Vogel, he's okay. He wants to come around to the pit area. He thinks he can get that thing repaired and get back out on the racetrack. Dennis Vogel continues under his own power.
Well, he's definitely got a visibility problem, though, as the hood on that car is blocking his view. He's leaning out the window trying to see his way back to the pit area. He's now about midway down the backstretch, approaching turn number 3. Dennis Vogel is from Manitowoc, Wisconsin. This is the Vogel Brothers Racing Pontiac, and here's the crash again in slow motion.
We'll see if we can pick up who the orange car was. We still have not had an opportunity to zero in on it. There you see him losing control. That must be, let's see, the orange car. It could be Bob Strait. And anyway, Vogel was the 3rd car, not in your picture yet. You saw Jim Sauter was also right there, so I think they may have happened up in the top 10.
Now, Dennis Vogel has made his way to the pit area, and here's the incident involving Vogel.
And Vogel, you're seeing tripping the left-hand side of the spinning car. That, of course, causing the damage to the hood and also to the rear quarter panel of Dennis's car. And Jim Sauter getting through unscathed.
So Vogel has made it to his pit area. Now they'll see if they can make repairs or possibly even take some parts off that car so that Dennis can get back out there in competition. We'll be back with more from Michigan International Speedway.
In Canada's outdoors, the greatest natural fitness facility in the world. Participation says, let's see you do it.
We are still under yellow at Michigan because of the accident out in turn number 2 involving Kurt Cheshire and Dennis Vogel. Let's take a look at the point standings in the American Speed Association. Dick Trickle is on top with 1,867. Butch Miller second in points, then Alan Kulwicki. Bob Sineker, who is not here because of his accident yesterday during the practice and qualifying session. And Mark Martin is 5th in the ASA point standings with 1,450. The top 5 at this point, as we have completed now 20 laps. The leader is Gary Ballou, having started in 25th position. He's up top. Alan Kulwicki is running 2nd. Then Mike Eddy is 3rd. Dick Trickle 4th. And Butch Miller is running in 5th position. And we'll try to find out what Mark Martin is doing out there on the racetrack during this yellow.
Mark, this is Larry Nuber at ESPN again. Do you have a reading on us?
Yeah, Larry, go ahead.
Mark, 5 of you have been having a pretty good tussle for the lead out there. Ballou looks super strong. How do you see it?
Well, Gary is real strong, but there's a couple other cars that can run right there with him. In fact, all of us top 8 here. So I see Sauter's caught up behind me, and Bob's straight too. So we're fixing to have a good run. Right now we're on 7 cylinders is our problem. Otherwise we feel like we can put the Ford up there. We're going to try to get the plug wire on or whatever's wrong on our first pit stop, because right now we've got 1 dead cylinder.
Mark, do you think this is a horsepower race, or is drafting really a factor?
It's horsepower a whole lot. The drafting does help, but the way these cars are, it's, you know, it's more horsepower. Hopefully we've got a plug wire off and we can get that on and get right up front with them.
Stay with it, Mark. We'll check back in with you later. Good luck.
Thank you, Larry.
Mark Martin currently in 6th position here as the yellow remains out. The debris still being cleared in turn number 2. We'll be right back with more action from the Detroit News Grand Prix.
There are those who don't need Sorels by Kaufman. Those who don't need the toughness of leather bonded to rubber, the warmth of Sorel's thick felt liner, or the grip of their sturdy rubber soles. There are those who don't need Sorels by Kaufman, but for those who do.
Sorels by Kaufman, made in Canada, are available for the whole family.
Each week, TSN's Down the Stretch will provide a complete and comprehensive look at the world of horse racing, the owners, the breeders, the jockeys. The latest news, track updates, feature races are all part of Down the Stretch, exclusively each week on the Sports Network.
When they come down this time, it'll complete lap number 22, and we will have the green flag and a resumption of racing. The pace car is in. Here comes Gary Ballou, the leader, off of corner number 4, and the green flag comes out. We're back to racing at Michigan International. We've had a tremendous battle up to this point. In the first 22 laps, we've had 4 different leaders and 9 lead changes. The 4 leaders have been Dick Trickle, Mike Eddy, Alan Kulwicki, and Gary Ballou. Gary right now is showing the way with Alan Kulwicki running in 2nd position. They come off of corner number 2 and head down the backstretch.
There's a couple of white cars there on the right-hand side of your screen. The 3rd white car in line, by the way, I want to make mention of. He's come from the very last of this field. Car number 91, Russ Erlin, but up front, Eddie, Kulwicki, Gary Ballou still going after one another, going through turns 3 and turns 4.
The average speed of the race was 160.35 miles an hour before the yellow, but the yellow laps have reduced the average to 125.76 miles an hour here in the first 23 laps. These ASA cars sound a lot different than the NASCAR cars do, Larry.
Bob, we told you earlier that basically the engine configuration, even though the cars are lighter in weight, there again is Mark Martin being passed by Jimmy Sauter, running for 7th and 8th. But they have the 9-to-1 compression ratio, so that's different from the Grand National cars. Plus, they allow for different headers. And a lot of these guys are running tuned exhaust. They can play with them a little more than the Grand National guys can. And it gives the cars a different sound.
6th place battle here as the number 24 of Jim Sauter has moved into 6th place, and Mark Martin falls back to 7th. So it's quite obvious that the lost cylinder that Martin has experienced is costing him. But Jim Sauter is definitely on the move. He now moves to the inside of Butch Miller, and number 52 takes that position and sets his sights on Dick Trickle and takes that position.
Bob, the other interesting thing about Sauter, he's in a car that Dave Jensen drives. Jensen is a huge man. He's like 6'4", well over 200 pounds, very athletic guy. Sauter is more like me, kind of a normal-sized guy. So Jim cannot be completely comfortable in that race car, but boy, is he giving it a good ride.
Well, this is the battle for 4th. Just for a moment, Sauter had 4th position, but Trickle took it back. Now, Sauter goes into 4th place once again in turn number 4, but it's a side-by-side battle.
Here comes Butch Miller. That's him down on the inside, that white and red trim car. That's number 52. Here's a guy who says he doesn't like this racetrack. I think my race car is better than I am, but Butch Miller has been near the head of the class all weekend long. That's him, and number 52 going along underneath Sauter.
This is the second race of the weekend here at Michigan International, as the Indy cars performed on this track earlier today in a race that you saw live here on ESPN, won by Bobby Rahal. That was a good race, but I would have to say that the racing and the competition that we've seen so far here in this one, I've got to give the edge to the ASA guys. Here is Kulwicki and Eddy once again side by side through turn 4 into the tri-oval, and Gary Ballou is right behind him.
Boy, Ballou is really keeping the pressure on all these guys. Jack, you got a comment on what's going on?
Yes, Larry, we may see some strategy unfolding right now in Gary Ballou's pit. Now, he's running in second position, but remember, he was battling back and forth for the lead. He's not a regular ASA competitor, and I talked to his crew chief and said, what are you going to do, go 1 stop or 2 stops? All the ASA guys are planning on 2 stops. Their crew is saying, we're going to go as high as lap 45, then try and feel it out. If we can get to 48 or 49, we may try and go the distance with only 1 stop. So the strategy's unfolding right now, even though Gary Ballou's your leader.
Gary Ballou is in the lead as he took that spot from Mike Eddy in corner number 3. Look at Ballou move that car. It is unbelievable, the performance that he is turning in. 28 laps have now, 27 laps have been completed, and Eddy moves to the inside in his green car once again and retakes the lead.
Just a little more developing that fuel story that Jack set up for us. These cars, remember, they're lighter in weight than the Grand National cars. They use the same fuel cells, although they cannot utilize quite as much of the fuel. There is Sauter in that blue car to the inside. We'll keep our eye on him. They cannot utilize every gallon of fuel in the fuel cells because of the configuration of these race cars. But primarily because of the 9-to-1 compression ratio, plus the lighter in weight, they can go easily 115 miles on 1 load of fuel. But because there are so often many caution flags and crashes here at MIS, the guys all thought, yeah, probably we can go too. Side-by-side racing. Butch Miller is in this battle. He right now is in 6th position, and we talked to Butch earlier about racing here at Michigan.
Butch, what sort of compensations must you make as a driver when you come off the short tracks and hit a super speedway like Michigan?
Well, you can't believe the difference between a short track and a speedway. There's complete different elements. It's like being a rookie all over again. You go out there, and instead of the car being loose or push or things you're used to, all of a sudden the air starts blowing you around, and you can move body panels around on the car and make it do different things. It's scary out there.
Butch Miller from Lawton, Michigan, battling here with Alan Kulwicki for 5th spot. Miller is the car on the inside of the track, and the number 28 Hardee's car of Kulwicki on the outside. Now, these cars are replicas of the street mobiles. The bodywork is fiberglass. That's one of the reasons why the body moves around so much, like Butch was talking about. It's scary. The fenders flap. There are special braces that have been welded in these cars for the competition here. The roof, by the way, is steel. That is a safety measure that ASA officials insist upon. Butch goes around Mike Eddy and now moves into 4th spot. Butch Miller is in 4th. Here they come off of corner number 4, and the lead is being held by Dick Trickle, but Gary Ballou moves inside. That's Jim Sauter running in 3rd place in that blue car on the high side of the racetrack. And Larry, these guys just aren't getting strung out. They're staying right with each other. Bob, I'm very impressed with how evenly matched apparently all these cars are. We told you earlier we didn't think that the draft was that much of a factor. Mark Martin has agreed with us that it's not really that much. It's mostly horsepower, and everybody, apparently that 9-to-1 plan is really working. Jack right now is with the guy who owns that blue car, Dave Jensen.
You talk about Dave Jensen being a big man. Well, it's evident he towers over me. But, Dave, you got to have some mixed emotions watching Jim run your car into 3rd position.
Right. It was a hard decision. We were qualified yesterday well for the race, but he unfortunately crashed. And we talked with him and his other crew, and talked to some other people with Ed Howe, and got the decision that it would be better off for him in it. We're not in the points, and Jim is, I think, 7th in national points, so he could gain today, where we were just up here finishing off the year.
Okay, big question. If it was Dave Jensen instead of Jim Sauter in that car, would it be running 3rd?
We'd hope. We'd try anyway. He's got far more experience than I've ever thought of having, and he's a real good shoe, but we run well here anyway. We ran 10th here last year, I believe, and this is they got a real good speedway here, and it's a neat place.
his size and my size, I almost hesitated to ask that question.
Well, Jim Sauter made a bid there for third position going into the backstretch, but he backed off the accelerator and settles back into fourth spot. But Jim Sauter doing a fine job with that car that is usually handled by Dave Jensen. Now he moves to the inside of Dick Trickle and does go into third spot.
Bob, there are 10 of them that are about a second and a half from one another. Look at the lead, the battle once again for the lead. I mean, Butch Miller's taking the lead. You kind of want to say big deal. They've changed this lead about 2 times every lap. The other interesting thing about this race is that under green flag conditions, not one car has been lapped yet. 33 laps down, all the ASA guys running very competitive, really learning their way around the 2 miles of Michigan International Speedway.
Butch Miller is your leader, and the lapping will begin before long because running on the inside of the racetrack in car number 12 is Jack Critter. That car well off the pace. There it was the pass right there. Critter running very slow to the inside of the racetrack. So a couple of cars have been lapped, but oh, I tell you, we've got a lot of competition up front. Butch Miller, the leader, and we will be back with more activity from Michigan International Speedway right after these messages.
Announcing an important step forward in auto service, the Canadian Tire Service Promise.
At Canadian Tire, we promise to fix your car right. And it's not right until you're satisfied. The bill you get will never be more than the estimate you approve. We guarantee our work, we guarantee our parts. We promise to do only what's necessary. For auto service that sets new industry standards, the right choice is Canadian Tire. Nothing unexpected, nothing unexplained. We promise.
Monday night on the Sports Network. 8 o'clock, some of the best golfers in the world are on hand for the Ryder Cup. 9 o'clock, there's great fight action on ringside. 11 o'clock, the late evening news wrap-up on Canada's only national sports newscast, Sports Desk. That's all on TSN, where Portland plays Houston Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern on an exciting NBA matchup.
Bob Jenkins, Larry Nuber, and Jack Arute back at the high-banked Michigan International Speedway for ASA competition. 34 laps completed. Look at the lead changes, 16 in all. And right now, Butch Miller has opened up just about as wide a gap as we have seen this afternoon, but that only amounts to maybe a second. Jack Critter, as we told you just a few moments ago, was running low on the racetrack and very slow. And he's now coming into the pit area.
One of the last guys to run triple digits on his race car. Jack Critter is from here in Michigan. He's been a sometimes ASA competitor over the last 5-7 years or so. Run a lot of the outlaw late models racetracks here in the area. And this year has become a semi-regular with ASA. He qualified very well here in the top 10 this afternoon.
We'll keep our eye on him to see if he goes back out onto the racetrack. They are changing rubber on the right side of that car. Meanwhile, the action on the track itself is still hot and heavy. Butch Miller leads with Gary Ballou running in second position. It is Jim Sauter running third, and then Alan Kulwicki fourth, followed by Mike Eddy.
This race is being led, well, maybe here for a couple seconds going to be led by that white car, the guy who says he doesn't like this racetrack. He just got passed by a guy who really delights in this type of competition. Gary Ballou is a rough, tough type of guy. The bigger, the faster, the stronger the racetrack requires you to be, the more Gary Ballou likes it. He is just that kind of individual. We've seen it today, him coming from the back of the pack. He's made his way to the front and certainly had his time leading this race, but he has not been able to shake people like Sauter there in that blue car and Miller in the white car right behind him.
The first 8 are running right together on the racetrack, either nose to tail or side by side. And the 9th place car is only, and we have a spin over in turn number 2. A car goes to the inside of the racetrack and gets down into the dust and the dirt. That's the number 78 of Ed Cooper, who was in for a pit stop not too long ago.
Yeah, Cooper was, I think, a lap behind anyway because of that unexpected pit stop in his Pontiac Firebird. This is the Habegger racing machine. By the way, one of the finest racing machines, really, in this type of racing. A very strong team. He qualified well here, but his chances for victory have gone away.
One of the things we'll be watching during this yellow period is whether or not Mark Martin comes in for a stop. Now, we talked to him a few laps ago during the previous yellow, and he told us that he was only operating on 7 cylinders, that a spark plug wire has come off. Jack, do you have any update on that situation from the pit area?
We're standing in Mark Martin's pit area. They're getting ready for a quick stop. They're going to change tires, fill the car with fuel, but most importantly, they're going to try and put these items on. That's a distributor cap and spark plug wires. They think that they dropped a cylinder because one of them isn't getting sparked, that maybe one of those wires has been burned. So they're going to make the exchange of all of them, a job that at your hometown gasoline station would cost you about $49 and take about 4 days. They're going to try and do it in about 14 seconds.
Well, we'll see what happens here. I don't know whether it would take my mechanic 4 days.
Now, I have never had a job done in 4 days. I've waited 4 days, but once they get to the job, it's just an afternoon.
There is Mark Martin on the backstretch, going slow under this yellow flag, and we anticipate a pit stop by him this time around. 3 ASA victories this year for Mark Martin, and he is one of 3 drivers that have 3 wins in ASA. He pulls to the inside of the racetrack and lets the others go around. He's headed for the pit area.
Yeah, Trickle and Butch Miller are the other 2, and the reason why they're thinking it's electrical, not necessarily internal to the engine, because this car has been running strongly. It doesn't seem like to Mark that they've obviously burned or damaged the piston on the inside. It obviously feels like it's something electrical, so they replace all those parts that Jack just showed you, and hopefully that will cure their problem. But the only time will tell, and they hope this caution flag lasts long enough to do all that work, of course, too. By the way, that white car, number 91, running right behind Mark right now, Russ Irwin from London, Ontario. He's been doing an excellent job today. He started way back in 30th position or further back. He's a rookie in ASA racing. He moved up to the top 10, not as quickly as Ballou or Sauter, but he's been doing a fine job running with the leaders all day.
Well, not only is Mark Martin coming in for a pit stop, but just about everybody else. 5 cars remain out on the racetrack, but everybody else is in. Gary Ballou is replacing the rubber on the right side of that car in number 112, and gas is being put in.
What a slick race car, Bob. I was down close to, of course, all these cars this week, and all the ASA cars have really improved themselves in appearance over the last 2 or 3 seasons, but this race car is really a terrific one. Speaking of nice race cars, this may be the cleanest race car we've also seen in any type of racing across the country.
And the Mark Martin crew is working feverishly to try to get that problem corrected in the motor. Meanwhile, the other members of the crew are changing the tires on that car. Rubber replaced on the right side. Now they work on the driver's side of the car. And it appears as if they still have some work to do there in the engine compartment.
Well, this will be a 200-mile, 100-lap race. We've completed a little bit more than 1/3 of it, 38 laps. So plenty of time, even if you come out at the tail of the field. Now, Martin apparently feels as though they have solved their problems. Only time will tell, but he'll have a lot of machinery to get through.
Mark Martin does not lose a lap and moves back out onto the racetrack. So we'll be checking with Mark in just a few moments to see if he thinks that problem has been corrected. Right now, ESPN and the American Speed Association present a track fact.
Pit stops are a way of life in ASA racing, and every year it seems like they get just a little more sophisticated. This device is called a bird cage, and it's bolted right onto the wheel assembly and assists the crews in changing tires very quickly. That might happen once, maybe 2 times during today's race. And how it works is the crewman approaches the rear of the car, the bird cage acts as a guide and slips the tire right onto the rear of the race car. Makes for the pit stops to be just a little more efficient.
One of at least 2 pit stops have been made in this race here as we are still under yellow. 38 laps completed, and we'll be back with more right after this.
The Grey Cup, Canadian football supremacy. 9 CFL teams strive for a goal only one can achieve. The road to Grey Cup is challenging. Exceptional individual skills expressed in an arena of team effort. Montreal hosts Grey Cup 85. A week of festivities set the stage for the ultimate confrontation in Canadian sport. For information on Grey Cup in Montreal, dial this hotline 1-416-928-3535.
The green flag comes out, and we go back to racing at Michigan following the incident involving Ed Cooper over in corner number 2. He slid off the racetrack, but the debris has been cleared. The dust and the sand that was placed up onto the racetrack has been blown away, and now we go back to racing.
It really scrambles the standings. That's Larry Conroy in that white number 21 who now heads the pack. Now, half of these guys pitted. Now, about 75% of them pitted. Not everybody did. Gene Harsh is moving on by the high side in that red, white, and blue scallop machine. It's a number 04. He's from the Cincinnati area. Not everybody pitted, but the leaders, the guys we saw running up near the front, are beginning to move up to the front again. That is Ed Cooper. Remember, he's down.
Alan Kulwicki is going to go into the lead here. He's the orange and white car on the inside of the racetrack. Alan has, of course, made a pit stop, and now he is just about to go into the lead on the low side of the racetrack.
Alan Kulwicki is the first of the leaders to emerge from the field as they mire through the first green flag lap, and Larry Conroy on the outside is not letting Alan get through very easily. Conroy is fighting for position. He knows he's got a chance here to lead some more laps at the Michigan International Speedway. Watch for the green car of Eddie. I got a glimpse of him out of the corner. He's on his way moving up too.
There you can see 41 laps completed, and there comes Mike Eddy in the green number 88 Pontiac. And he sets his sights now on the leader, Alan Kulwicki. That is Ed Cooper there in number 78. He was the reason for the yellow that we just came off of. But of course, that car is running at speed once again.
Larry Conroy there in that white, orange, and yellow number 21. That's another one of the finer cars in the circuit. That is almost a Junior Hanley house car. Junior has been a big help, I'm told, to this crew throughout the 1985 season. Whenever they needed advice or needed extra parts, they simply gave Junior a call, and he's been very instrumental in their success.
Let's see what Jack Arute knows about whether or not Mark Martin's problem was corrected. Jack?
Well, the crew chief went under the hood, as you could see, checked out the spark plug wires and the distributor cap, and they were A-OK. So now what they've gone and done is they've purchased another coil. Hopefully, next pit stop, they're going to check and see if this is the problem. It's hunt and peck, search around and see what it is, because they don't think it's internal, they think it's electrical.
Now, Mark Martin on the racetrack does not appear to be moving up very quickly, so perhaps he still has his problems. We'll continue to watch that situation for you. Now, that's Ed Cooper, who is leading Alan Kulwicki down the backstretch, but I believe that Cooper has lost a lap in that spin.
Yeah, Bob, he's at least one and maybe 2 laps down. Difficult to tell at this point, but what he needs, of course, is that proverbial caution flag to help pick up a lap. Right now, he's setting the pace for the entire field. So, and we've got a spin in turn number 3. Car number 93, spinning out Ed Evans, I believe. Yeah, it is. It's Ed Evans, a man from Wisconsin who is a regular in this type of racing. Wisconsin, of course, is a place where a lot of ASA drivers have come from over the years, a lot of Artco drivers, and all the drivers are familiar with Ed. And Ed apparently making no contact, but taking a wild spin there in turn number 3.
Yeah, besides that, he was running more or less in the middle of the pack, and it was kind of a miraculous thing that everybody was able to avoid his spinning race car. There is Ed Evans, who calls his home West Allis, Wisconsin, which of course is the home of the famous Milwaukee Mile that we televise IndyCar races from every year. Let's take a look at it again on replay. It has happened in turn number 3.
Bob, I think, and there goes Dick Trickle going right by. Butch Miller goes, yeah, a couple of the really top runners almost getting involved in that. And I think this really gives you an indication of how much the ASA drivers have improved. This is a very difficult racetrack for these guys to run. And they only do this once a year. They all got around him very skillfully and looked easy from here. I'm sure it wasn't when you're behind the wheel.
So the caution out once again for the 3rd time. They're averaging about 120 miles an hour because of the caution flags that we have had. And because just about everybody pitted a few laps ago, we do not expect any pit stops during this caution period. 45 laps completed, 100 will make up this Detroit News Grand Prix. We'll be back in just a moment.
There are some special things in this world that only a handful of people can appreciate. Now, maybe you're not one of these people. But if you are, spend some time getting to know Mazda's new RX-7. But I'll warn you, it'll flat spoil you for anything else.
Mazda's all-new RX-7 features the exclusive dynamic tracking suspension system, a fuel-injected engine that delivers the smoothest flow of power in the world, and aerodynamics is finally honed as its price.
It's pretty special, like you and me.
High jumping, fast shooting, the best in the world are on the Sports Network with our weekly broadcast of the National Basketball Association. Tuesday, November 5th, the Portland Trailblazers take on the Houston Rockets. All the live action starts at 8 p.m. Eastern here on the Sports Network.
The top 6, 47 out of 100 laps completed. Alan Kulwicki, the leader. Gary Ballou second. Mike Eddy is running third. Fourth spot, Russ Hurlin. Fifth is Bob Strait. And sixth is Gene Harsh. And the green flag comes out to resume our racing. We're coming off the third caution period of the afternoon caused by a spin involving Ed Evans. But the green comes out again, and Gary Ballou moves to the inside of Alan Kulwicki and tries to take the lead back. We have had 18 lead changes among 7 drivers, and the race is not quite half over now.
And for your Wisconsin fans, Trickle and Sauter, they're still in there. They just dropped back a little bit under pit stops under this yellow flag that we just had, so they're still right there.
Mike Eddy moves into second position, going inside and passing Gary Ballou. Now Mike Eddy will bring the car high on the racetrack and try to fall into Alan Kulwicki's draft. They come off the fourth corner and onto the tri-oval once again. Kulwicki's Ford, the Hardee's Ford, leads here in Michigan.
Kulwicki has been one of the best qualifiers of the 1985 season in ASA. There's a special point standings for fast qualifiers only, and Kulwicki led that for a long time during the 1985 season. He's also won a race this year. He's run a couple of Grand National races. That man right there, Gary Ballou, of course, he's run a couple too. Mike Eddy, kind of a surprising career that he's never had a real legitimate shot at Grand National racing. He's like the Dale Earnhardt of this type of racing, that man right there. Mike Eddy knows how to drive with his foot buried into the floor. He's a very fast race driver, and normally at places like this, or Salem or Winchester, the other high-speed racetracks on the ASA schedule, he shines.
He's beginning to close in ever so slightly on Alan Kulwicki. The crossed flags by the ASA starter indicates that we have reached the halfway point. 50 laps completed and 50 laps to go. 121.25 is the average speed, but don't forget a lot of those laps have been run under the caution flag. They're running around 160 miles an hour when they're up to speed. Eddy now looks to take over the lead once again. He moves to the inside of Alan Kulwicki halfway down the backstretch. They go into turn number 3 side by side, and Eddy with a half a car length advantage.
If Mike runs the inside through 1 and 2 again, watch for tire smoke coming off the right rear. Now, it is definitely tire smoke. No question in my mind that the motor is not involved in this. Remember, these are fiberglass bodies, and the cars are designed so the bodywork runs as close as possible to the wheels. And because it's fiberglass, not metal, it's not nearly as severe a problem as it would be, say, in a Grand National race when you got metal trying to cut into one of your tires.
We've also noticed that Gary Ballou has had that problem going into corner number 1 also with the tire smoke. Let's go to Jack Arute for more on this.
Normally, the ASA division is used to running a different tire than they've got on their cars today. It's softer, and normally during races, even on a quarter-mile racetrack, they'll change precisely the right rear and maybe the left rear as well. But they're running a Grand National tire today. Not the same Grand National tire that the Grand National division runs in Michigan, but the one that they run at Pocono and Dover. It would be very soft for this type of racetrack for the Grand Nationals, but extremely hard for the ASA division. That's why we haven't seen a lot of tire changes in the first couple of pit stops.
Bob, the other thing that happens is that because the tire is a harder compound for these lighter weight cars, the drivers also don't get as much of a warning when the car begins to break loose. That's why this racetrack can be so difficult for ASA drivers. The cars spin out. Plain and simple language, spin out on their own much easier than they do on the shorter tracks with the stickier tires.
Well, of course, this racetrack has also been the subject of a bit of controversy over the last couple of years, as a matter of fact, in the possibility of it being just a little too rough for high-speed racing. However, Roger Penske has indicated that just after this race is completed, work will begin on repaving this 2-mile high-banked oval at a cost of around $2 million, and it'll be repaved for the racing, which will begin next spring and next summer here at Michigan International. I mentioned also that this track is used just about every available day during the year as a test facility for American Motors.
Yeah, Bob, and that may be one of the reasons why the track has deteriorated kind of rapidly in the last couple of years. That is as compared to racetracks go. Because the track gets some artificial thawing during the winter months because AMC has to come out here and do their testing, and they need a dry racetrack. So they artificially thaw the racetrack out that normally would be frozen all winter long. So it gets at least double, maybe triple the many of thaws and refreezes that a normal racetrack in the Midwest gets, plus the fact this is high bank that really multiplies the problem.
The first three right here, Mike Eddy showing the way, Alan Kulwicki second, and Gary Ballou third. Fourth position is Dick Trickle. In fifth spot is Mark Martin. Sixth is the number 24 of Jim Sauter, and in seventh position is number 91, Russ Erlin.
Mike Eddy has won one race so far this year in ASA competition. He won at the relatively nearby Berlin Raceway. That's in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Kulwicki, as we told you, he has won a race, but also has qualified up front many times in 1985.
One of the rookie candidates for Rookie of the Year in American Speed Association is Russ Erlin, who is turning in a great performance. He is in the seventh position there in car number 91. Russ Erlin from London, Ontario.
Yeah, in effect, he's in a tie for the rookie point standings, but Erlin, he qualified poorly here. He qualified at only about 154 and a half miles an hour. This is a Ford, by the way. It's almost a Canadian Ford factory ride, but Erlin started way in the back of the pack. He moved up rapidly to 7th, 8th, 9th, and through all these pit stops and all these spins, Erlin has held his own.
Well, we are past the halfway point of this American Speed Association contest here at Michigan International Speedway, and the average speed at the halfway point, but we had three caution periods, 118.60 miles an hour, 18 lead changes among 7 drivers, and we have run 11 laps under the caution flag. As of the halfway point, here were the leaders: Alan Kulwicki, Mike Eddy, Gary Ballou, Russ Erlin, and Dick Trickle in 5th position. 6 through 10, Bob Strait, Jim Sauter, Gene Harsh, Mark Martin, and the number 55 of Bill Stevenson running in 10th. The battle right now is for second spot. That's Gary Ballou and Mike Eddy still going at it tooth and nail out there on the racetrack as Alan Kulwicki continues to hold the lead. Now here comes Dick Trickle into the fight in 4th spot, and Trickle moves inside of Mike Eddy here in the trioval, just in front of the grandstand, crossing the line, and suddenly Dick Trickle is showing some muscle, moving into 3rd.
See, all you people who live northwest of Chicago, I told you Trickle was still in it. There goes Ballou down to the inside of Kulwicki again. So what? Ho-hum. Kulwicki runs 2nd. Here comes the number 99 of Dick Trickle. Mike Eddy goes by on a high side, so it's Ballou, Eddy, make that Kulwicki, Eddy, and now Trickle, but that'll change. Just give it a corner or two.
Right now they fall into single file formation, but don't expect them to be in that line very long. They'll move out to pass, and a car smoking, and I believe that's the tail end of a spin. It's the number 92 of Peter Gibbons from Stouffville, Ontario.
Yeah, Peter is an infrequent competitor in ASA racing, and him making the field. He was one of the 30 fastest cars among the 45, 50 or so that entered here this week. A lot of big names did not make this field. Maybe we saw the emergence of perhaps the second generation of ASA racers, and maybe Gibbons represents one of them. But people like Ken Harrison didn't qualify for this race. Canadian Kevin McKenzie, whom everybody expected. Jay Sauter, Jim's son. Kenny Lund didn't qualify, but he did get a ride later today. Steve Chrisman, John Wilson. And we told you earlier that Jimmy Sauter and Bob Seneker came in as favorites of this race, spun and crashed trying to qualify, and they didn't get in. So you can see a lot of the very familiar ASA names just didn't make this field, but this guy made it.
Peter Gibbons stays out on the racetrack, but the yellow flag is out for the 4th time this afternoon, and we reduce the speed once again. 58 laps completed. Might this cause the pit stops, the second pit stop, Larry?
Maybe, Bob. I have a feeling that a lot of these guys might wait, though. We are inside that window where you probably can go the distance in one of these cars with one more load of fuel. But the way things are going here, I think you can anticipate one more yellow flag. So I think you've got a choice. You can either stay out or come in. If you do come in, I repeat one more time, you can probably go the distance on the fuel that you get. It looks like everybody's ready to come in, Bob.
Yeah, it does. They're moving inside now and getting ready to enter the pits at the north end of the racetrack. Here comes Gary Ballou, and right behind him is Alan Kulwicki. We'll watch their pit stops to see who can get in and out the quickest. Dick Trickle also comes in, so does Mark Martin, Jim Sauter, Mike Eddy, and the others. Now the split screen on top is Gary Ballou, and on the bottom is Alan Kulwicki. Here's Jack Arute.
Gary Ballou further down turn number 1 between Gary Ballou and Alan Kowicki. The race is on. Who can get in and out of the pits quickest? Right side rubber for Gary Ballou. The work going on there nicely. Meanwhile, further on down towards the start-finish line, Alan Kowicki's team is going to right side and left side rubber. They're going to make an exchange of all four tires. And now Ballou, sensing that that's happening, he's going to do the same. They're still up on the jacks. Kind of a lengthy stop, but under the caution, they have that opportunity. We're going to see who beats whom back out onto the pit road area. But one car that has been in and out, made an exchange of tires, was Dick Trickle. He was in there too. Here comes Alan Kowicki. He's down and out first, but Ballou pulls out. It's going to be a drag race into turn 1.
Here they come.
Here comes Mike Eddy.
Gary Ballou and Alan Kowicki and Mike Eddy file out of the pits in that order. Mark Martin also came in, and they once again raised the hood on that car to try and find out the problem that has been plaguing Mark since just about the green flag. We're yellow. It's 59 laps completed out of 100. Back with more from Michigan International Speedway right after these messages.
The excitement of CIAU basketball is on the Sports Network with a super weekend of action Saturday and Sunday, November 9th and 10th. Peter Watts and Jack Donahue will be on hand for the 1985 University of Guelph Tip-Off Tournament. It's doubleheaders each day with the semifinals on the 9th, starting at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, and the consolation and final on the 10th, starting at 2 p.m. Eastern. That's all right here on the Sports Network.
We resume the racing here at Michigan. Just about 40 more laps to go in this 100-lap race. And Bob Strait in car number 80 running up front right now. But Butch Miller right ahead of him at number 52 as Alan Kowicki, Dick Trickle, and Mike Eddy move up through traffic. Remember, they just came back onto the racetrack from having made a pit stop.
Bob, I think the leader is, I didn't catch him as they came by that time. I think it's Russ Erlin. Now, these guys are running back about 7th, 8th, or 9th in line, but certainly they're coming up to the front. But, geez, if Erlin is the leader, what a great story that is. Starting way in the back, he comes here with not very much experience at all, but he's really putting it to these long-time ASA stalwarts.
It is indeed Russ Erlin leading the pack down across the finish line. However, Butch Miller right behind him in that number 52 car and looking to take over the lead. But we're watching now the guys that have been up front all race long try to sort things out and move up toward the front once again. Eddy winning way high on the racetrack there in the second quarter.
Here comes Mark Martin on the high side, going around a very high side. And Alan Kowicki almost coming together with Ed Evans as they go down the backstretch. Alan having a hard time getting around Mr. Evans.
That was close as Evans got in the way of a couple of guys, including Gary Ballou, who were trying to pass him, and that could have been a serious situation. Look how high on the racetrack Mike Eddy is in that green Pontiac, but he brings it down to the middle of the racetrack as they go into the tri-oval, and Eddy in number 88, one of several leaders that we have had here this afternoon.
Martin on the high side there has come from the back of the pack, so apparently they may have made some improvements to their setup. Jack right now has a comment on the guy who's still leading this race, Russ Erlin.
Russ Erlin was added to the field under the promoter's option rule, which we go back into the point standings, and the guy that's the highest up in point standings that failed to qualify is added to the back of the pack. So this was a lucky break for him to even start this race, Larry.
Well, Erlin is 10th in the point standings right now, and as I said, a candidate for Rookie of the Year. He's trying desperately to hold off the challenges of Butch Miller at number 52, and now Gary Ballou and Mike Eddy have caught up with the leaders.
Look at Eddy. He is an artist. He truly is. I got to express to you, these guys are going 170 miles an hour, and Mike Eddy is darting back and forth like he's swerving in his two-wheel bicycle down the driveway. Eddy is a maestro at this type of high-speed driving, and Mike Eddy, he has, you know, we had the courage of a pigeon a few years ago. I laid that on Sleepy Trip. I think this guy has got it too. And by the way, if you don't know, the courage of a pigeon is when you drive down the street, you have to get very close to a pigeon before they jump. They don't fly away. They don't go 3 miles away. They just kind of flutter out of the way. And they have these steel nerves that allows them to do a lot of things that the rest of us can't.
After all these years. I think that was 1980. You finally explained to me what that means.
Is that right?
All right. Erlin's still the leader. Look at the battle for second place behind him, though. Gary Ballou in the red number 112 with second spot. That is Ed Cooper running there in number 78 in the third car in line. But remember, he's at least a lap down because he has been one of the reasons for our caution period to spin.
Obviously, Mr. Erlin has never won an ASA race. This being his first full season, he's ranked 10th in the points. He's just ahead of Bill Stevenson in the point standings, by the way. And if Erlin could pull off this, I guess you'd have to call it an upset, but you'd have to say, I saw it coming. He's been running competitively all year. But what a great moment this would be for Canada to win an ASA race here at MIS.
Erlin has finished, however, in the top 10 on 6 different occasions this year, so it's been a consistent season for him, and he has led 9 laps during the first 13 races in the 1985 ASA season. I'll tell you, he's doing a fine job of holding off the challenge now of Gary Ballou in corner number 2. Ballou and Mike Eddy both are right behind Erlin, but it looks like that Gary just cannot get around. Let's see what he does here. Moves to the inside, going off the backstretch into turn number 3, and finally Gary Ballou passes Erlin and moves into the lead, and here comes Eddy also.
Look at Mike Eddy hammer away. Boy, he seized on that opportunity. He saw that Mr. Ballou, and we'll wait for this to go by. Eddy saw that Gary Ballou found a way to get underneath Erlin, and boy, he just pounced on it with dramatic impact.
Now Mike Eddy moving inside of Gary Ballou and slamming the door on him as they go into turn number 1. Mike Eddy moves back into the lead. Boy, I'll tell you, there was a time when no one would run a green race car, but back around 1965 when the Europeans came over here with their European green, it changed all that. And boy, we are seeing an outstanding performance by a green race car here this afternoon, driven by Mike Eddy.
Of course, this is the Ed Howe car. Those of you who've been following late model racing for the last 2 or 3 decades know that Ed Howe has always run a green race car. Reason why? I had always wanted the Buck superstition. He's never had those types of thoughts in his head. And Ed Howe, as a racer, had the ability to run on paved tracks and win, and to run on dirt tracks and win. Short tracks, long tracks. Ed Howe was one of the most outstanding late model drivers really in the history of this aspect of automobile racing, and now he's certainly one of the most prolific and successful car builders and owner, fueling this team for Mike Eddy. And of course, the number 88, it's always been Mike's number.
Now, once again, that third car there in line is Ed Cooper, and he is a lap down. The fourth car in line is the third place driver. That is Butch Miller. And there's a look at Gary Ballou, the driver of number 112, who started 25th.
Mike Eddy, Gary Ballou. I'll tell you, those are 2 of the toughest hombres that you would ever want to have to tangle with in any type of racing. Here comes Butch Miller back in the inside, that white red trim number 52. But to try and get around Ballou and Eddy, whew, that is one big job. I would take them one at a time out here.
This has been just a tremendous race from the top of the green flag, as we have seen numerous lead changes, somewhere around 20 last time we counted, and the lead changes continue just about every lap. Mike Eddy, you can see there, the only 4-time champion in the history of the American Speed Association. This year, Mike Eddy is 7th in points, having accumulated 1,326 in the first 13 races. He has won 1 time this year on the ASA circuit. As they come down, this will complete lap number 70, 30 more to go.
Mike Eddy, who has the 1 win this year, he won once in 1984. The wins have trailed off because he's won 18 times in his career, and he's ranked in the top 5 among the all-time leaders for most career main event wins in this type of racing. He won an awful lot 3, 4, or 5 years ago when he was winning championships. As I mentioned, it's trailed off a little bit, but he's still
all right, so 70 laps completed, and we will take this break and be right back with more of the Detroit News Grand Prix. At the moment, the leader is Mike Eddy.
There's heart in this land, it's there in all we do. That's why hands across this country reach for the blue. And when we get together, it's a taste that's clean and true. So when you call, then you call for the blue. You know it's gotta be blue, that's why you call for the blue. That's why you call for your blue. It's time to call for the blue.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. TSN is the Sports Network.
Back at Michigan International Speedway, where Mike Eddy now begins, and a car is spinning in turn number
Cooper
2. That
again.
is Ed Cooper once again, and he moves that car high on the track, and he thoroughly escapes some of the others. Now goes to the inside, down in the grass, and the car spins behind him.
Looks like Stevenson, can't tell from this distance, but if so, what a disappointment. Stevenson's had run a great race and a little bit of unburnt and unspent fuel. Yeah, it is. It's Stevenson just coming out the header there. No fire. Stevenson trying to get righted again. He has not lost a lap, so if he can pick it back up, he'll remain probably in the top 10. Bill has run a very good race, and it's unfortunate that happened right in front of him.
So the caution comes out once again. This is the 5th caution of the afternoon, and it involves Ed Cooper once again. He spun on lap number 37 and brought out our 2nd caution, and this is what happened on lap 71 actually.
You see Cooper trying to make some ground there. He's laps down already. He just goes into a long, lazy slide. The car starts to come back up. There goes Kawicki by. There goes Trickle by again. Oh, my goodness. And now Stevenson's coming up along behind. He doesn't know which direction Cooper's going to go, and Stevenson has to put it into a slide. There goes Sauter scooting through the inside, kind of splitting the difference there, and Stevenson coming to a stop. Neither car hitting any other car or any barrier.
Well, it was really impossible to tell how close that was, but it looked like that he slid right up near Mark Martin and others, and Martin has pulled into the garage area, gone behind the wall, and his day is over.
Well, Bob, just some speculation. You know, Martin may have blown an engine, or something else may have happened to that race car, and he may have spread water or oil or some other type of liquid on the racetrack, because Mark was running very close to those guys, and maybe he was the culprit. It was not just a matter of breaking loose.
Well, he was running considerably behind Cooper, who started the spin, but there could have been some moisture on the racetrack for some reason or another. Now, there is Bill Stevenson, who was also involved, having pulled out of his pit area and going back onto the racetrack.
Well, Stevenson works for Young Life, a Christian organization that takes care of troubled youngsters and often gives them jobs on his pit crew.
The debris being cleaned up in turn number 2. We'll be right back with more from Michigan.
Monday night on the Sports Network. 8 o'clock, some of the best golfers in the world are on hand for the Ryder Cup. 9 o'clock, there's great fight action on ringside. 11 o'clock, the late evening news wrap-up on Canada's only national sports newscast, Sports Desk. That's all on TSN, where Portland plays Houston Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern on an exciting NBA matchup.
Back at Michigan International Speedway, and the yellow remains on here with 74 laps completed. Mike Eddy is the leader. Gary Ballou running in 2nd spot, and Butch Miller is in 3rd in car number 52. Well, earlier in the weekend, Larry Nuber had a chance to examine an ASA car and compare some of the body styles.
ASA is late model stock car racing. Now, this is a Ford Thunderbird, and believe it or not, this type of machinery has had as much impact on this type of racing as it has had in Grand National racing. It is said that this is one of the most aerodynamic cars on the highway in today. It's gone through extensive wind tunnel testing, but wait till you see the ASA late model stock car. As you can see, there is a dramatic difference between the appearance of the stock car, the race car, and the streetmobile. Now, the nose up front is standardized. You can only buy that from particular garages and factories who manufacture these for ASA racing. The hood is designed and contoured back so as to confine with and conform with the windshield. You can see dramatic differences in the shape of the front end of this race car with the streetmobile. Also back here in the area of the rear windows and the sides, some significant changes have been made for the race car, particularly at a high-speed racetrack like here at MIS. ASA officials will tell you that their late model stock cars look more like race cars because they use too many stock parts. Well, they have come from the same mold, but in the racing dress, it really does give them a different appearance. You make the call.
And the yellow remains on. This is one of our longer yellow periods of the afternoon. We have 25 laps to go here with the average speed at 118.24 miles an hour. We should be going green soon. When we have the green, we'll be back with it.
Another presence is about to be felt. One created to unlock a new driving force. Dodge Lancer. Its fuel-injected engine has a turbocharged option destined to peel away the veneers of what makes things go. So when Dodge Lancer shows itself, it's yours to unlock the force of revolutionary performance. Chrysler leads the way.
Field is over in corner number 3. However, the pace car is accelerating and moving to the inside of the track. We anticipate the green flag this time around on lap number 76 and a resumption of the racing. Mike Eddy is the leader. Gary Ballou is right behind him, though. And in third spot is Alan Kowicki, as he and Trickle and Butch Miller are side by side. Look at Trickle on the inside of the track, and Dick Trickle has certainly not been heard from for the last time.
Boy, he really got a big jump. Too low on the bottom of turns 1 and 2, though. He's going to lose some momentum. You see Kowicki picking back up. He almost got Ballou. Ballou gets away. Kowicki goes around the high side. When you're down on the bottom, of course, all the centrifugal force that you can use when you're up on the 18-degree banking goes away because it's a little flatter down there. That's why he got that great jump, Trickle did, but he couldn't take advantage of it as he moved around turns 1 and 2.
Mike Eddy has looked so strong here all race long, never back any further than in 5th place, and he has led for several laps of this race. We have had 25 lead changes among 8 drivers, and the changes we anticipate not over yet. Dick Trickle is falling off the pace just a little bit, falling back to 4th as Butch Miller and Gary Ballou fall into 2nd and make that Kowicki and Ballou fall into 2nd and 3rd.
But look at Eddy go. Mike Eddy has opened up. He's out of the picture already. We have not seen that very many times today. Mike Eddy may have been saving just a little bit, maybe a 1/4 of an inch of that throttle pedal. Look at the distance he has opened up over 2nd place, Alan Kowicki. Remember, you can't always use the draft here. It may not help you.
23 laps to go in this 100-lap, 200-mile race for ASA cars. Eddy, the leader. Kowicki, 2nd. Gary Ballou is 3rd. Dick Trickle is 4th, and Butch Miller running in 5th spot. There they are, poised to go.
The first 6 cars continue to be very much in it. Behind them, Ken Stauffer, Gene Harsh, and Bobby Dodder are the next 3 people in line. They are a little bit off the pace. They don't appear to be candidates for the win.
The backstretch is banked at only 5 degrees, but now they go into 18 degrees of banking at the north end of the racetrack, turns number 3 and 4. Now they move into the tri-oval in front of the thousands of spectators who have gathered here for this doubleheader this afternoon. First, the Indy cars, that race won by Bobby Rahal, and now the ASA cars. Jim Sauter in car number 24 has hit something and has body work coming loose on the right side of that car.
Either hit something or just the tremendous buffeting from the wind these fiberglass-bodied race cars take may have taken the car and just done some significant damage to the side of it without hitting anything. That's possible. It's very lightweight. We told you earlier they weld in special supports, special struts to try and keep these cars stabilized during the running of the race. Oftentimes it's just not enough.
Well, he's about to take 6th spot. As a matter of fact, he does move around Gene Harsh at least momentarily for 6th. This is a battle for the position. Now Sauter moving that car high, and Harsh getting the advantage just a little bit in the tri-oval. A great battle back here for 6th spot as we have great racing all over this 2-mile high bank track.
Gene Harsh, originally from the Cincinnati, Ohio area. He's run at the Queen City Speedway when it was dirt, then after they paved it. There's Ken Stauffer in car number 90. He's a guy who's kind of taken this division by storm. Nobody really saw him coming, but about 2 or 3 years ago, suddenly he became a top 10 runner with consistency.
Jim Sauter, who wasn't supposed to run here and got the ride just before the green flag dropped, as a matter of fact, went into this car, which is normally driven by Dave Jensen. The number 24 car of Jim Sauter is currently in 8th spot.
81 laps have been completed. We are now inside of 20 laps to go in this race. Up front, it continues to remain heated. There is Russ Erlin in the budget rental car, number 91. I guarantee you, this is not a rental car. Erlin has been in the top 10 all day long, and he's still there knocking at the door. These guys are kind of battling and trading back and forth, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. And there is Sauter making contact, having to get out of the throttle. Contact being made coming out of turn 2 between Sauter, and didn't catch exactly who the other car was. Was it Harsh?
Well, in any case, he lost a couple of positions, and now Bobby Dotter moves to the outside, and there is a serious problem with Jim Sauter's car. It could all evolve around the fact that some body work was coming loose. It made the car handle poorly, and Jim Sauter is coming into the pits.
It certainly upsets the aerodynamics, and even though it's lightweight fiberglass and the car weighs less than 3,000 pounds, it still does make a difference. Not only that, but it's dangerous to have a piece sticking out the side of that. You never know when you might puncture somebody else's tire.
Well, they'll run over there to the right side of the car and try to make repairs or rip that sheet metal away, fiberglass away, that has been flapping in the breeze out there.
That is Dave Jensen, the big guy there in the yellow suit. By the way, the people in the red and white, those are the Dairyland people that normally are the crews on Jimmy Sauter's car. Jack?
Well, you're right, Larry. Dave Jensen was really the man that made the assist to remove the piece of fiberglass that came loose. We're gonna get a look at it right here real quick. There it is. There's the problem on the car that almost put Sauter out of the race. You know, he came so close to crashing there on the backstretch. Just a simple piece of fiberglass, but the best way to relate to that is when you stick your hand out a window when you're going at about 100, or actually 55 miles an hour, you change the angle of attack. Doesn't it slam it up against the doorpost a little bit? That's what happens with fiberglass when it's not the right way.
Well, let's take a look at the replay and amplify on the near tragedy that Sauter experienced.
Yeah, there he is, move up. It is Gene Harsh. He goes to the high side. Not enough room up there. Jim's got to get out of the throttle. He wiggles a little bit. Russ Erlin moves to the inside, but Sauter making no contact with any other car or the outside wall.
That's Bob Strait in number 80 now that he is racing with out there, along with Russ Erlin in number 91. Tough break for Jim Sauter, who has had his problems here this weekend.
The lead, by the way, while we watch this action, has remained relatively stable. There is Bobby Dotter coming in, the same type of problem. Wind often gets underneath the car there, and that is a part of the car that normally doesn't take quite the pressure, the amount of air pressure they get here at the Super Speedway, and just rips the fiberglass. Sometimes it's steel trimmed along the bottom, bodywork off the race car. It's dangerous, and you got to come in and stop temporarily.
These cars really aren't accustomed to these high speeds here at Michigan. These cars compete for the most part on the half miles, but here they're turning laps in excess of 160 miles an hour, averaging, a matter of fact, almost 170 miles an hour in qualifying. Up front, it is still Mike Eddy leading, but Butch Miller has come into second position now. Alan Kulwicki in third. Let's see if Miller will make a bid for the lead at the end of the backstretch. He does not. Mike Eddy continues to look strong here with only 15 laps to go.
If anybody has anything special left right now is when you start to see it. And look, for a while like Eddy was going to run away and hide from everybody else, but that hasn't been shown to be true. Mike Eddy was unable to escape Butch Miller's onslaught, and Alan Kulwicki has been able to hold court. We've told you a couple times during the race, the draft here, as Terry Seneker slows going down the backstretch, the draft here is not a significant factor. You don't really know until you get out there, given the particular setup of the car on this day, the track conditions, how well, how much, how effectively you can draft. So now is the time when you got to start experimenting. Kulwicki is the guy who looks like he's going to do some head scratching here and figure out just what can he do to take the lead.
There they are, the first three, Eddy, Miller, and Kulwicki, as we get set for the final 13 laps of this race here in Michigan. We'll be right back.
Each week, TSN presents an hour-long look at the National Football League with two great shows. NFL Week in Review with host Harry Callis as he analyzes key plays from the last 7 days. Then, NFL Films Presents provides unique footage and revealing interviews along with a critical analysis as Harry Callis and Steve Sable look at the league. Two great shows each weekend here on the Sports Network.
Bob Jenkins, Larry Nuber, and Jack Arute back for the Detroit News Grand Prix. ASA, Butch Miller makes a bid for the lead at the end of the backstretch, and he grabs a lead from Mike Eddy. Alan Kulwicki in third spot as we have a car in the wall, and the yellow on once again.
Can't tell from this distance who it is, but I'll tell you, it looks like, oh, it's car number 80.
Bob Strait.
Bob Strait, who has made significant contact with the outside retaining wall. Now, before you ask, the race cannot end under a yellow flag. The last 3 laps, we have 88 laps completed. This looks like a relatively significant crash. The last 3 laps must be green, but not necessarily consecutive. That means lap number 98 can be green. We can go yellow. We stop counting. Lap number 99 can be green. Maybe another yellow, stop counting. It cannot end under yellow, but it does not necessarily have to be 3 consecutive.
Dave Simcoe is going very slowly on the racetrack also in car number 13, but we don't know whether or not he was involved in this incident that is involving Bob Strait, number 80. The car is just...
Bob getting out, I think, Bob. No, that's a safety man. Bob Strait has not removed himself yet.
This is just out of turn number 2 at the entrance to the backstretch. Bob Strait from Flossmoor Heights, Illinois, the driver involved in this crash, and the safety personnel.
Looks like Bob getting out of the car now, yeah.
Driver is emerging. There he is. He looks like he's a little bit shaken, but not seriously injured. We take a look once again at the incident.
There you see Bob spinning a couple of white cars right behind him. Gene Harsh is one of them, and Stevenson is the other, and both of them duck down low, hit the binders without hitting him hard enough to throw smoke, and they avoid him. Both of those guys doing an excellent job.
And he had pretty significant contact on the right side of that car and in the front end, but it appears as if Bob Strait is going to walk away from this crash with no serious injuries, and we're very glad to hear that. So now, less than 12 laps to go. We're yellow, and we'll be right back.
Wouldn't it be nice if auto service was a little less mysterious?
Not to worry.
Because so often you don't know what's going on or why. Well, auto service at Canadian Tire is different. We'll tell you exactly what's needed and why. We promise to fix your car right, and it's not right until you're satisfied. Canadian Tire Auto Service. Nothing unexpected, nothing unexplained. We promise.
Is my car finished? Finished? Yes, I'm afraid so.
We are back at Michigan, and to add to the fact that we are yellow because of an accident out in turn number 2, it has begun to rain here at Michigan. Although there are some blue skies beyond the grandstand, it is raining here at the racetrack itself, and it's well, a fairly hard rain, enough to make the track slick. So what they're going to do is stop the cars next time around, wait for about 10 minutes and see how things go, and then make a decision at that time.
Now, we mentioned just before the break that this race would have to be run under 3 green flag laps, laps 97 through laps 100. Obviously, the race could be stopped at any time by rain, and of course that would be off. Here is Gary Ballou. Gary Ballou is no longer up front among the leaders. Look how far behind he is now to the leader, Butch Miller. Reason being, that's like 20th, 15th, maybe the top 10 now. Now we begin to get among the leaders. Now we're getting close to the front of the pack, and there is the front. Gary Ballou chose to stop during this yellow flag for a change of tires, and it looks like now that was the absolute wrong decision to make.
Well, it certainly did not go well for him, as he was in the pits quite a while and then came out far behind. And since they are going to stop this race at this point, Gary really has come out on the short end of this deal.
It is raining significantly. This is a high-banked racetrack, so we will have the opportunity, perhaps, if it would stop raining, to get this track dry. But 92 laps will be completed officially as the cars come down, this time with that man right there, Butch Miller, the man who says he doesn't like this racetrack, leading and maybe going to win this one sitting under red flag.
It is not a real serious rain, and we certainly could resume here in the next few minutes, but we'll just have to wait and see. If we do end it at this point, it'll be a shame because we've had such great racing, and we had hoped to see a battle for the finishing positions at the end of 100 laps. We'll be right back in a moment.
November gets off to a swinging start as TSN continues its 1985 golf coverage. On Monday, November 4th from England, it's the Ryder Cup. This is the 26th edition, and the big names will all be there. Join us from the Belfry Golf Club Monday, November 4th at 8 p.m. Eastern. Also in November, watch for the World Cup of Golf, Nissan Cup World Championship, as well as PGA Seniors and LPGA tournaments, all in November here on the Sports Network.
91 laps completed here, 9 laps to go, and the top 10 read like this. Butch Miller, the leader, Mike Eddy running second, Alan Kulwicki is third, Dick Trickle fourth, and Russ Erlin is fifth. In sixth is Kent Stauffer, seventh is Gene Harsh, eighth Ed Evans, ninth is Wally Lambert, and 10th is Larry Conroy. Now, Gary Ballou made a pit stop during this yellow flag, and we really question that decision. It's dropped him way back in the field, so he has a lot of ground to gain here in the last 9 laps of this race, but he has shown that car to be in very good working condition throughout the race, but I don't know whether he can catch the leaders with only 9 laps to go.
Bob, before they came out of the 4th turn, Gary Ballou was around a number of cars that may be a very interesting call. There is Alan Kulwicki going down to the bottom of Trickle. Now watch this. Here's a replay on the restart. There is Gary Ballou moving on the high side of Bobby Dotter. No green flag yet. There's 1 car. There's 2 cars going to the high side of Churchill. A couple of the other back markers there. 4 cars, still no green flag. A 5th car, 6th car, 7th car going on the high side of Conroy. 7 cars, and there finally is the green flag.
Well, Gary did make up a lot of distance there, but still has a long way to go. The number 91 car, Russ Erlin, who was running in the top 10, slid off the track, but it does not bring out a yellow, and we are still racing here. Now, the leader is Butch Miller in number 52, and he is trying to stave off the challenges of Dick Trickle, Alan Kulwicki, and others.
Miller is using that Neil Bonnet line as he drops way down low.
Yellow is out, Larry.
The yellow flag is out, but Butch Miller was in the midst of trying to do that serpentine movement down the straightaways to keep the cars behind him from picking up the draft. Trickle really gets a big advantage after this yellow flag. Trickle was running in like 4th or 5th position. Now he's moved into the runner-up spot, and yet another caution flag with 92 laps down moves him right up to 2nd.
This is the 7th caution period of the afternoon, and only, well, as they come down, it'll complete lap number 93. We have 7 more laps to go. The reason for the yellow is debris on the racetrack.
No doubt from Russ Erlin, Bob. I was just about to comment, Ballou really has an advantage now. Gary Ballou, who stopped, we questioned the move at the time because it put him about 25th in line. A lot of lap cars between himself and the guys running up front. Now he's like 6th in line, and he has a real chance. And Ballou, remember, has new tires on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys exactly between Gary Ballou and the lead. Can he do it?
Well, we'll see if he passes before the green comes out this time around. He did make up quite a bit of advantage last time we were going off of the yellow and on to green. But Gary is in a much higher up position at this point.
It's an interesting ruling, Bob, and everybody handles it a little differently, but those were lap cars for the most part that Gary was going around, although he certainly did pass a lot of people before we went green.
All right, yellow once again, and the race will end here under green within a few laps. We'll be right back for it after these messages.
Hold your breath. You've never seen anything like this.
That's the luck of the draw. They draw that steer, and if you draw a steer that's...
This is Rodeo from New Zealand, and TSN has a 1-hour special highlighting a rather unique approach to rodeo. Join us for the thrills of New Zealand Rodeo, Friday, November 15th, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, here on the Sports Network.
This ASA field is on the backstretch in lap number 95. Butch Miller is the leader, Dick Trickle second, Alan Kulwicki third, Mike Eddy fourth, and Gene Harsh is fifth. Now, as they come down, they will complete lap number 96. So we will have 3 laps of green here. And boy, it's anybody's race at this point. Butch Miller is the leader at this point with Trickle second, Kulwicki third, Mike Eddy fourth, and any one of those drivers very capable of winning this race.
Gary Ballou has been moved backwards by ASA officials as a result of passing before the green flag flew the last time. Gary was moved back about 5 or 6 positions. He gets another significant jump as the green flag flutters. This time, coming out of turn number 4, Butch Miller continues to lead this race.
Here we go with the last 3 laps now, 96 completed. So we'll have 4 laps of green here. And Alan Kulwicki tucked in right behind Dick Trickle in the battle for second position. Miller continues to lead off of turn number 2 and down the backstretch once again.
It would seem like this is Trickle's and Kulwicki's only chance to get hooked up and try and run down Butch Miller. Butch Miller surprisingly has led the latter stages of this race. Mike Eddy, whom I really thought personally kind of had this race under control, has suddenly slipped back. And Eddy runs in 4th position, and he runs about 7 or 8 car lengths behind the 2nd and 3rd place runners.
Mike Eddy did look strong.
Black flag coming up for
Gary Ballou has been given the black flag because of passing under yellow. He did it a couple of times, and the most recent time was enough for the ASA officials, and the black flag has been displayed for Gary Ballou. He'll have to come in for a stop-and-go penalty. Alan Kulwicki now goes to the inside of Dick Trickle. Kulwicki looking for second position, but Trickle will have nothing to do with it. He stands on the accelerator, gains a half car length advantage into turn number 3. Side-by-side battle for second position here as Miller pulls away in the lead.
The question becomes, does this work to Butch Miller's advantage or to the advantage of these two guys? You run a little harder when you're running door-to-door with somebody, but the draft may slow you down. Trickle holds on to second. Kulwicki tucks in behind. Butch Miller watching in the mirror. Lap number 98 complete. Laps, remember, must be under the green flag. 2 laps to go. This is beginning to look like Butch Miller's race.
Less than 2 laps ago, they're off of turn number 2 and heading down the backstretch once again. The real battle here is for second position. Dick Trickle, who started this race from the pole position, is in second right now. Alan Kulwicki is in third. Kulwicki started in 6th spot. The leader, Butch Miller, is in turn number 4 now, coming out of it and onto the tri-oval. As he comes down this time, he'll receive the white flag, and there'll be 1 more lap to go. 1 more tour of the high banks here at Michigan, and Butch Miller will have a win.
Butch Miller, the ASA veteran, the man who is a veteran of late model racing here in Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio. He's run V6s, he's run LMS. He says he does not like the super fast high banks of the Michigan International Speedway. But will he change his mind if he wins here today? Butch Miller really driving a perfect line all the way around the racetrack.
The final half lap. Here is Miller in the lead, going into the 18 degrees of banking in turn number 3. Keeps the car low on the racetrack. Behind him, Dick Trickle and Alan Kulwicki, and Trickle is in trouble. Trickle hits the wall in turn number 3 while running second, slides across the racetrack to the infield.
Ruling is race back to the line.
Here's the checkered flag. The race apparently over with Butch Miller, the winner, and Alan Kulwicki second. Dick Trickle lost control in turn number 3 between turns 3 and 4, hit the outside wall, slid to the inside of the track, into the grass. He is beginning to move once again and will limp across the line and hopefully gain a decent finishing position because of that.
Dick Trickle in it for the points, of course, would like to cross this finish line and finish 100 laps. Car with very little steering, and Dick is dirt tracking through the infield, but he does cross the start-finish line, and Dick Trickle finishes his race.
The crowd stands on its feet and applauds. Here is Dick Trickle getting in trouble.
Dick Trickle spinning in front of Alan Kulwicki. There was distance. There was daylight between the two of them. Alan didn't touch him. It just got away from Dick. We told you the tires they use here, harder compound than the ASA regulars are used to, and it's very easy for the car to get away from you.
So Trickle was able to limp across the line. However, just as he crossed the line, he stopped his car and it stalled down past the finish line. So the winner of this race is Butch Miller, and we'll be back to talk with him in a moment.
Yes, it's a nice life. Gonna taste right. Gonna taste right. You can't believe what you hear. It's all you wanna be. Taste smooth and light, and it goes down, down, down. So yes, it's the best lights right high in the ice.
Well, we're in a very jubilant victory lane. Butch Miller, the Victor Butch, your crew chief just told you ran 160 miles per hour. You got all shook up when you heard that.
Well, he said we ran 169. Well, we qualified at 166, and I was scared to death when I qualified. I don't know what happened.
You know, you said earlier in the week that you felt that the car was capable of winning, but you were questioning whether you were capable of doing it because you don't like a super speedway. What do you think now?
Well, I tell you, the old Camaro here, she ran real good, and we set the car up so as it really handled well. Doesn't go through the air good because of the way we've adjusted things, but it sure glues itself to the track.
You know, you were a driver the last time we saw you in Bristol, Tennessee on a late model Sportsman Brigade race there at Bristol, and now here at Michigan in the ASA. What are your aspirations in the future, Butch?
I don't know. I like ASA. I think it's a terrific organization, and we plan on running MSW colors and for Chevrolet, and I don't know. I like what I'm doing right now. I don't think I ever want to be a Grand National driver.
Well, that's the story from a very jubilant victory lane. Let's go upstairs for a wrap-up with Bob and Larry.
All right, thank you, Jack. Our congratulations to Butch Miller and the top 5 finishers here this afternoon. Finishing in second position was Alan Kulwicki, who drove car number 28, the Hardee's Ford. Gary Ballou in third. Mike Eddy was fourth and Gene Harsh fifth. However, we believe that Gary Ballou will be penalized a lap and drop from third position for passing under the yellow. Great race, Larry.
Butch Miller has never come close to winning in a super speedway race before. Dick Trickle was the acknowledged kingpin in that division as far as ASA goes, but Butch certainly did it today.
Thanks for joining us here at Michigan International Raceway for the Detroit News Grand Prix. ASA won by Butch Miller. For Larry Nuber and Jack Arute, this is Bob Jenkins. Thanks for joining us. So long, everyone.